Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We will show you a live case study. In fact, I was part of that live case study while I was working at Larsen & Toubro. You will get a clear idea of how one discipline or one situation or one professional cannot get innovation going on. It has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be a culmination of all the strengths of every discipline for innovation to happen. So these are those important series for you to understand the innovation process. So we are very clear that finally innovation is said to have happened only if the user gets the benefit, and a large number of users are really sort of happy with the type of product which has been designed and it solves their problem. So in an innovation to happen, you need to have great user satisfaction and delight. So we can't use innovation against everything like innovative research. No, innovation is said to happen only when there is user satisfaction and delight. So that becomes extremely critical in our journey. We should not be in that confusion that we'll call everything innovation. It could be a creative idea, or it could be a cutting edge research, but it can't be innovative research till it has not reached the people for whom the work can be beneficial. Let us now focus on our L&T Z line. What are the 4 core pivots which worked over there? The first pivot was user focus, and the users are different levels. There's one user who is the end user who is coming and filling petrol. The other user is a person who is actually filling petrol for you. Tertiary users are the users who are manufacturing the pumps, who are installing the pumps, who are distributing the pumps. So the primary user, the secondary user who is the maintenance guy, and the person who is installing, all these levels of users are very, very important in innovation cycle. So these, so when we say user focus, it is multiple levels of users, not just one person who is the end person who is using it. So now let us come to the problem. The problem given, to us was, when I joined the company, in fact, they had saying that, oh, we're completely losing business. We have a serious problem in hand. No orders from the companies because L&T's product were expensive and was not having any big advantage over the competitors. So they realized that our products are not looking good. The realization was aesthetic. So let us go to IDC and hire a designer who can make the pump look beautiful. So they were only lacking, design and user-friendly product. And then when I went into the company, I realized that's just not aesthetics and user requirement. There's much, much more to innovation. So then what, the context was that L&T was manufacturing an electronic petrol pump. This is way back in 1988. In 1988, when we had only Maruti cars on the roads. Actually, Maruti car was just launched when we launched our petrol pump. Before that, it was only ambassador cars. It's that type of era. And I will show you the journey, how we went forward. And the focus was that we need to design an electronic petrol pump. Earlier, what type of petrol pumps used to be there? Mechanical petrol pumps with those meters and all. Then what was the first thing which struck me when I went to L&T? It is a size, it is a financial muscle, and if it's the brand of the company. What will be your design focus when you design for a large company? What will be your design focus when you design for a small company? As soon as they realized that they needed a new look pump, they came to IDC. So they're very, very clear that they have to have the right manpower for the right work. And then this is our division. Petrol pumps came under switchgear division. So this particular division was our R&D, and we used to have different departments, very well organized and very well oiled. What happens in large companies like Larsen & Toubro? They have very efficient product development and very efficient manufacturing and very efficient sales and marketing. All the models are there. When you do design, innovation by design, you have to look at the creative ideation part, which was missing. You have to look at completely out of the box product, which was missing. And all the roles fell on me when I joined the company. So on top of it, the R&D head came and said that you need to reduce the cost of the product by 25%. So that was the main requirement they came up with. Then, the product should at least last for 5 to 6 years in the market as a champion product. And the form and aesthetics of the product had to be strikingly different and, new in the field, because they were already out of business and competitors had, already had great products, so they need to do that. And then they said, don't change the hydraulics, because hydraulics is already ready, and if you change that, it will take a longer time cycle. If you change a lot of things, your product life cycle will go up. Now, if you look at these pitfalls, what is interesting is there was nobody in the design section, in the mock-up section, the first one which you saw, in our pitfalls for the innovation process. Whereas all other sections of prototype making, pilot production and mass production, L&T was phenomenally good. So there was a big advantage for me, right? You could start and come up with a great product idea and it will sail through all those stages. But here I'm sitting in one of the best companies in the world who have all the other process but are missing the design process. So as I told you, today innovation, if it has to happen, it has to be across all the segments in the product. You have to have technology which should be contemporary and futuristic. You must have excellent user interfaces. Your manufacturing has to be phenomenally good. You have to have very good management systems in place. We just had to make incremental changes in the other sections to make them come into the innovation flower. And I call this the sunflower model of innovation, because if you take care of all aspects of the petal will look towards the sun, and that is looking towards the user, and you have innovation in your hand. So what happens with the user study? So I was taught in IDC that you go and fill petrol yourself, stay in the stations, learn from the operators, learn from the display people, learn from all the aspects working with the pump. After doing all that study, you also need to study what's happening with products around the world. So we studied the international products. Then we studied a local market which put L&T out of business. These are all, essence of design. And then we started our idea sketching. In fact, we had some 20-30 sketches. Multiple scale models. So you can see the scale model. This is a small scale pump model of this size. So when we made these models, we realized that this model was not very unique or very different from other existing products. So we were analyzing, this model was unique because it was having a sloping column and there much more variety. And to the everlasting credit of using scale models and playing with models, this whole story of coming up with the Z-line came up because of play with this particular model. It was a small model in the hand. We were trying to see how the sloping column can work better. And we said, why to have the pipe? You see that vertical pipe? So we removed the pipe which takes the signals from the bottom to the top, and the electronic signals as well as the electrical wires. And we removed that pipe and became phenomenally clean, sleek, as well as less clutter. So this is the predecessor which was not there in the sketch form. So only when we started making models. So I always keep telling my students that when you start making physical models, scale models, your creativity grows at least 4 to 5 times. So here we have this pump which is at the plaster scale, small scale, and then we made a big presentation to the management. The management said, we don't want to risk this completely novel out of the box idea, but we'll make a prototype of this as well as a prototype of the pipe. You saw the pipe design? So those two prototypes we'll make. But I said before prototype, I like to make a mock-up model. What's a mock-up model? Thermocol which doesn't work, it's just made out of thermocol. So this is a mock-up model made out of cardboard and thermocol. And when we went for a meeting here, what's the advantage of making these models? You get a lot of inputs from across your company. From the manufacturing people, they came and told us what's difficult in manufacturing. The marketing people came and told us what is good or bad about the features which they think was important. The people from the maintenance came and said, oh wow, this is very good to maintain, but you see to it that the box comes off very easily. So everybody can relate to a mock-up model very early in the design phase. So you can make quick changes and make it much better for implementation. So these are the first mock-up model, and then we made out of the mock-up models, we made at least 3 mock-up models. And we created 2 prototypes. You remember the pie shape? The pie which was the balanced form, and we had the Z-line form. So there was these 2 forms again. In big companies like Larsen & Toubro, there's something called the product development meetings. In the product development meetings, a very, very tough meeting where every department comes for the meeting. And at this stage, it went to that particular meeting where we had head of manufacturing, head of product planning, head of finance, head of maintenance, head of marketing. So all these people will come and they will look, each one will look at his point. What will the finance guy look at? He will say how much investment I need to make in making these 2 products come true. Investment from point of view tooling, investment from point of view of buying new machines, investment from point of view of development. What will manufacturing guy say? Oh, will my existing manufacturing machines take care of all the components? We gave him a brief that the manufacturing, you should not change some of the synergy. So we kept 90% manufacturing same, but we had 10% improvements because without that, you can't have innovation coming in. Remember the sunflower model? At every level, you need to innovate. So the major things we kept constant, but we innovated on some very key components to come up with a great level of innovation. Within the company, it was very interesting that there were 70 to 80% people who chose the pie design. Easy to install, easy to, there's no, headache at all. But if L&T is talking itself as Imagineering, to the everlasting credit of Mr. Devendranath, who used to teach at IDC. He used to come, he was the head of R&D there, and he was my boss. In that meeting, he challenged the manufacturing and challenged the people in the maintenance and said, is it possible for you to take up this challenge of creating an out-of-the-box idea and taking it to the market? When you give a challenge to people, what will they say? Very accomplished engineers and accomplished people in the company, they took up the challenge. They said, yes, we will do it. Because they had all the strengths, they had all the best machines in the world to produce a pump which was very different from any pump which can be manufactured very easily by local manufacturers. Whereas Z-Line needed very, very high-end CNC machines, very high quality control of dimensional control of the assemblies. Because just imagine if the sloping column becomes at an angle, it looked very shabby, leave alone making it look out of the box and neat. In L&T, we have a large petrol station ourselves, so we installed both of them over there for study purposes. And we checked what is happening. They're all working prototypes. So we reached the working prototype level. What's the advantage of Larsen & Toubro, as I told you? After your first mock-up, you get the complete strength of the company to smoothly sail to the next stages. So that's the beauty of this design. And this is the final selected concept. That's me, if you can see me. In 1988, I think I was around 26 years old at that time. And then these were the features of the Z-Line pump at the concept level. It created a completely new image. Everybody was very happy within the company. The sloping column, remember in form and aesthetics, what was my brief? My brief was to design a new look petrol pump. And all the pumps were boxy. To create a new look, we had to come up with a dynamic shape. And electronic product, remember? Electronic product had to have it's a new animal, right? A mechanical product is a mechanical product, electronic product is an electronic product. So your whole design has to be very different. So how can you show high-tech look in a product? So we took cues from TVs and radios and all, and we said we need to have a display which is very, very prominent and which is good. So we have that display which came up, that's called the high-tech look of the pump. Because the display, and when the display glows in the night, it makes it look very high-tech. Then we also came up with this modular assembly. The hydraulics was assembled separately in the hydraulics division of Larsen & Toubro, and the electronics was assembled in earlier pump. It was together. It was so difficult because electronics needs different type of equipment, different type of clean rooms, different type of systems, whereas hydraulics needs different tanks, a lot of testing happening with the fuel before you put on. So it's quite messy over there. So we did modular design very early, so you could get very good sort of details over there. And then we got pilot production order from one product from each company, the Bharat Petroleum, the IBP, the Indian Oil, and then the Hindustan Petroleum. All of them gave one order, saying that for pilot production we'll give you only one order. One piece is very difficult to manufacture. But L&T being L&T, they said we will spend all the money. If you make, for example, if the product cost is say 1 lakh rupees, if you have to produce one piece, how much will it cost? 10 lakh rupees. That is the issue of mass production. So we spent 10 times the cost because we had to make inroads into the market. So L&T had this large CNC turret punching machines. Their accuracy was 0.01 millimeter. And then we had convenience for the station, the secondary users. In fact, earlier, you know what used to happen? The station, the petrol pump owners had to come to the pump, open the panel, put a torch and read this display, which is to be read in the morning and in the evening. How much petrol was sold during the day in his shift. But we said our secondary users also are important. So what we did, we moved it up and we had a nice display for him. So he can just come to the pump and read in the morning and go. So user convenience for every user is very critical. Here we just used, creative ideation from car industry. Lift the bonnet. So we lifted the bonnet and we fitted the cards like our computer industry. If the card gets out of order, you can replace it in 15 minutes flat. Earlier it used to take 3 hours. So just imagine the amount of loss to the company, station owner, if you can't operate a pump for 3 hours. So this became a very, very, important feature in the pump, easy maintenance. Then we had some excellent painting systems in Larsen & Toubro, which were inline painting. We used to have automatic painting lines. So very good, painting lines were there. We had great manpower, as I told you, very, very skilled manpower for machine parts and pumps and motors and all were phenomenally done. And then we were very, very happy that we could come up with our first pilot production. You can even see the pellet here. This is coming out of the pilot production from the factory floor. So now after the pilot production, we installed all of them, all the 5 in 5 different locations in Bombay, and all the company owner executives went and saw them and they were all very, very happy. Especially because it had a new look, it had a lot of these interesting features. So out of the 5 companies, Bharat Petroleum immediately placed an order. Again, a pilot order, but large order of around 200 petrol pumps. So when I talked about the innovation flower, it is not just because of my shape and my, user interface that our product was innovative. No. That petal manufacturing technology, that every petal had phenomenal amount of in-depth understanding. Because I'm doing design, innovation by design, showing only the design story. But I need to tell you about the other aspects which are very critical. And this electronic development was phenomenal. The type of development our engineers did in our division, electronics division, was very good. And this particular, electronic cards were very robust and very little failure in the field. And then we had large scale deployment, like as soon as Bharat Petroleum sort of gave an order, we put up these pumps all over, all over the country. So what are the key, points? You can clearly see that we use very little sheet metal, right? The shape itself demanded we use 40% less sheet metal than the earlier box. Then we had, a very convenient user display panel, which was wide angled. So what happens when the display is wide angle? You can see from large angles. The angle of vision is larger. And the innovative shape made the pump look inviting. We also had multiple displays, that is one display running in rupees and another display for running in liters. So we had very good chips which could actually run your pump on both. So we used to have a button there, say that if you want to buy for rupees 100, you could actually, rather than buying in liters, you could buy for 100. That was the first time L&T introduced it. Now it's very common practice, but at that time it was very new. And then we also had a 3 display where you have the rupees, the liters and the rate of petrol coming in. Whenever you design a product, you need to have multiple variants. So the costs were higher, of course, but there was a chance for the oil companies to have differentiation in the cities and in the rural areas or whatever they want to do so that they can have much better systems in place. And then what we were very, very happy that within 2 years, L&T went into leadership position. The competition was wiped out. There was phenomenal cost to feature design, became the largest selling pump. And what was surprising was that the customers demanded for Z-line pump from the oil companies. They said, we want only Z-line. And then the biggest satisfaction came when I was in the company and I read this, Bharat Petroleum internal magazine. And the customers thought they got better petrol and better quantity, correct quantity of petrol from the Z-line. So that is the perception they got. So now just imagine a shape can be related to perception, right? So whenever they went to a Z-line petrol pump, they got better petrol and better measure. And they did get better measure, of course. So we did a lot of those, small improvements, as I told you, like from the innovation model. And then because the shape was new, the product was new, people also thought they got better quality petrol, and that was a great satisfaction for us in the company. And then, as you rightly we discussed, the unique shape, gave it leadership position, and much better maintenance access from the top and from the side. In fact, the sensors are located over here, the sensors. So when you open this box out, even you have very good access to sensors and maintenance. And within 3 years, when we went to school for a survey and we asked children to draw petrol pumps, the children were drawing the Z line. So that becomes a very important aspect of semantic change. So people registered that as the major shape, because it's a unique shape. So when you do the collaborative teaming, you are surely bound to be successful and come up with innovative products in the market. And then by using these things, the pumps, everywhere we could see scales and scales of pump coming up. The displays were easy. There were demand for more and more. All new stations would put up our pump, and it's now installed all over the country. It is like nearly 1,700 pumps displayed. But now it's out of market, and we will understand how we close this. I think the product, it went out of production in 2001. We gave 5 years life. So L&T kept selling till 10 years. 10 to 11 years they kept on selling, because when the product is popular, they don't actually take it out of the market. So that became very, very sort of successful, and the company also turnover grew nearly 4 to 5 times in the petrol pump sector itself. And it was a real case study on innovation, where the customer accepted it finally, and that's why we're calling it innovation. And there were large scale deployment across the country. And on top of it, very critical aspect was that we had the users basically at multiple levels were satisfied. The primary user, the secondary users, and the tertiary user, all of them were having something in the pump which was valuable for them.